And welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. As you can see, the world keeps spinning around. And how do you negotiate with people you don't like, or, or people who don't like you? Well, we have an expert. It is Joseph McGuire in Dublin and commentator Dr. Ken Lloyd from LA. Thank you both for being there. We are recording. Joseph, tell us about negotiating with people you can't stand and you don't trust.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun, Ed. Um, do I have permission to share?
Absolutely.
I do have some slides here, so if you just bear with me one moment. Go.
Clear sight,
Yep.
communication.
Oops. There we go. Oh, it's jumping all over the
Oh, the
place.
Golden Bridge. I love
I
that.
thought you might appreciate that image. My intention when negotiating is always towards finding agreement. And sometimes that may be agreement to disagree, agreement to part without a deal, but ideally to do it peacefully. You mentioned negotiating with people you may not like, and I'm reminded of the words or the quote attributed to Theodore Roosevelt: "Speak softly, but carry a big stick." And sometimes, when our desire is for peace, our intention is for peace, our behavior is peaceful, others may behave quite aggressively, and sometimes we need to be very firm and very direct with them. I'm reminded of a story I was told by one of my connections. Actually, it was something that happened over in your part of the world, Ed, on the west coast of the USA. And he was negotiating on behalf of one of his own contacts, and he had to go to the other company, to their headquarters. So he walked in by himself, walked into the boardroom, and all the opposite team, the opposition team, because they were in opposition, were seated at the other side of the table. But the CEO was standing at the head of the table, and he was built like, as we would say over here, a brick outhouse. And he was a very, very, very sizable figure. And the greeting was, "I don't effing like you. I don't know what the F you're doing here. Why don't you F off?" Now that's a pretty dramatic start to any negotiation. I've never heard of another scenario like that, but it was very real. Now, thankfully, my contact was well prepared. So all he did was just sit down and smile and say nothing and wait for the other guy to take his seat so that the negotiation could begin. But that requires a great deal of self-awareness, self-control, and inner peace to be able to do that. And sometimes in a negotiation, things can become very, very fraught indeed. So the aspiration is towards a peaceful agreement, but the reality may be more than a little different. So I I use this acronym. Um,
Peace, peace.
yeah, absolutely, because it sums up so many of the key elements for me. But preparation is the most important piece. Um, Preparation involves many different components. And something I see quite frequently is in many businesses, the preparation is all around the technicalities and the finances. Now, that's very, very important, but it leaves out the communication development, the communication element, the behavioral element, and the personalities. And that's a big part of what I do when I work with companies around negotiation is I help them not just prepare in terms of strategy. I don't need to know the technicalities of the deal, but I do need to know about their culture and their vision. But I do work with them in terms of their internal preparation. I work by profiling the members of the team so that so I have a very good understanding of who they are, but I will also relay that back to them. We will do some role playing where I will act as their upcoming counterpart, and I will be as difficult or in some cases as obnoxious as possible because I want to see how they respond under pressure, because pressure is unfortunately almost an inevitable element at certain stages of a negotiation, particularly for smaller organizations dealing with larger ones. I will also profile their upcoming counterparts so that they have a clear understanding of the people involved, not just their titles and roles. Because unless we take into account the personal dimension, the personality, the character, the behavior style, communication style, etc., we're missing out on a very, very important part of the process. And again, I'm reminded of another story of the Camp David agreement that facilitated ultimately by President Jimmy Carter, where the protagonists were Menachem Begin of Israel and Anwar Sadat of Egypt. And the negotiations had been going on behind the scenes with the various different groups for some 9 months previously, and they'd come close to breaking down on numerous occasions. But Carter had brought the two leaders and their delegations to Camp David. And again, they were very, very close to breaking down. And Begin basically said, I'm leaving in the morning. And Carter went back to his own cabin, his own room, and thought about it. And what he did was he found a photograph of all of Begin's grandchildren, and he wrote their names across it above each of the individuals. And he went over to Begin and showed it to him, gave it to him. And Begin became very emotional. He was really touched. And Begin was not a soft man. Begin, prior to the founding of the State of Israel, had been a leader of the Irgun, who were regarded and officially classified by the British who were ruling what was then Palestine. The Irgun were officially classified as terrorists. So Begin came from a very, very tough background, but Carter read the man. He understood the personality. And that gesture of bringing in the personal element at the right time was what transformed the process. And Begin came back and the agreement was signed. So if we underestimate or neglect the personality component of a negotiation, we're missing out on something very, very significant.
So it comes down to one-on-one.
It can do. It can do. And sometimes when a negotiation is proving to be difficult, it's what happens outside the room. So it's important to be able to take breaks during, like a negotiation typically is not going to be one meeting anyway. It's going to be a series of meetings, but it's important to be able to take breaks. And whether it's a conversation off the outside the room, sort of in the background during the break, or whether it's conversations that happen um, between meetings, that personal connection is so, so important because people in a formal negotiation, they typically wear their game face. And it's being able to read behind that. And they present a position which is often seen as being an entrenched position, but it's not necessarily their final position.
So the negotiation is a stage.
Yeah,
And then to get off the stage is what you mean by a break.
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's
So,
just not a potty break, but it's just to break the atmosphere.
yeah, it's to break the atmosphere. It's to debrief your team, but it's also to calm the atmosphere in many cases. Um, I'll come to the next slide in a moment because it's very, very relevant here. Um, but it's also to just literally take a break because when we're in a very intense negotiation, series of discussions like that, it can be exhausting. So we sometimes just need to literally be in a different environment, even for a very short period of time, to refresh. So even if it's simply going into the men's room and throwing water on our face, that can be enough to just help us reset.
So uh, I can't help but think about what's going on in Pakistan or Geneva or wherever right now, right now, and reflecting on what you said. And it's a game. And the media doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're actually doing a disservice by talking about what's going on from their view because it may not be at all correct.
Mhm.
And the idea of the Golden Bridge with the escape ramp, the off ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ken, what do you think?
Well, I think certainly Joseph's points, as we've just from the very beginning, are critical. When we go into any kind of negotiation, yes, the what, as you said, Joseph, the technical is all very important. But then you go to the who, and who are we meeting with? Because we're not meeting with robots. These are all individuals. These are humans, personalities, drives, needs, different styles. How do we really, and how well do we really understand them and what they will really respond to? And importantly, how do we build trust with them? And if we come in with one size fits all, it's not going to happen. And without that element of trust, we're not going to get anywhere. You talk about what Menachem Begin did. That was a trust building action. It showed his heart, his care, his concern. It takes a discussion to a very different level. So yeah, the preparation side is certainly more than crunching numbers and facts and figures and data, because that's just not going to cut it when you're dealing human to human.
We do
So,
have to,
yeah, go ahead, please.
sorry, I absolutely just following on from what Ken
Yeah.
was saying there. Absolutely agree there. Part of the preparation is understanding our counterparts. We have to understand as far as possible what their position is, what their intentions are, what their motivations are. And in a commercial negotiation, they're not concerned about our emotional state as a rule. They're only concerned about what's in it for them. And it's often the case then we have these other negotiations going on at a global level now at the moment. So there are very entrenched positions there. And regardless of the outcome of this particular set of negotiation, we can be sure that things will not be finally resolved. There will be lingering tensions and lingering underlying issues, which will probably last for some very considerable time, long after we're here on the planet.
So people who get into a tough negotiation don't have any trust.
Often, it's often the case that you start with complete lack of trust. So it needs an accepted mediator. Like on this island, we had Senator George Mitchell, and the aptitude, the intellectual heft, and the patience that he showed, that he consistently demonstrated, that facilitated trust among all the various participants. But that takes an extraordinary quality, an extraordinary depth of character and intelligence and
No,
patience.
are you just referring to Northern Ireland?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, what I was thinking when you brought up Begin was Golda Meir. There's a tough cookie.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is out of the blue. This is not rehearsed audience, but
Mhm.
um, and I like the spontaneity because it is enticing and refreshing. What do you think about Golda Meir in a situation right now with U.S. Iran and the idea of the Pakistan and Turkey they're involved because both sides were looking for some way to find somebody as a manager, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a facilitator that would be okay to either side because there's just zero trust.
Yep. Yeah, I would it's hard to know, but I would suspect that if Golda Meir had still been there, we would not be in this position. She was certainly a very formidable character, no question about that. She didn't become the Prime Minister of Israel without having immense strength, inner strength and character and determination and fortitude and all those other qualities. But she was a very different character to Benjamin Netanyahu. And I suspect she would have done a lot of work behind the scenes to avert this sort of situation happening. But we don't know because different people, different times.
Yeah. Can you relate all this to a business situation?
Oh, that's such a good question, because you look at what's going on in the world now, and as has been mentioned, there's so much that we don't know, and we're getting our information from varied sources that aren't lined up consistently at all. Depends what you read, and you're going to get a so-called truth from each of them. In a business situation, hopefully there is a lot more transparency, openness, and frankly, honesty and accuracy as to what's going on. So we can get a much better insight into whatever the difficulty, situation, negotiation topic might be, as well as the individuals who are involved. And frankly, it's not at such a complex, if you will, existential level that all these other factors enter into it. So, and I do think we still go back to step one of what Joseph has here. We got to really do our preparations in the most thorough and effective way. Joseph has talked about role plays and practicing and all of that. It's critical. So you don't come in and get surprised, or act inappropriately and engage in behaviors or make comments that turn off the whole negotiation before it even starts. So it's that level of awareness that's so important here.
Joseph, you're showing the slide here of somebody very experienced in using pottery and making a pot. Why do you show
Mhm.
this slide?
Well, if you get it wrong, I haven't done pottery, but I've seen people who are very skilled at doing it. And if you get it wrong, you make a complete mess. So unless you're prepared or unless you've got your I won't use that. I was going to use the metaphor, the ducks in a row, but unless you've got all the right ingredients in place and you've got everything lined up and you have the skills and the understanding to do it properly, you're likely to have a mess. And it can be, and in commercial terms, that can be a very expensive mess in so many different ways.
So interesting to me. When I looked at that first graphic, it looked like this person is molding what will be a cup, and we will ultimately then, to piece and then toast it. That's what it looked like. So if you want to get there to an agreement where we share that, this is that stage of preparing that chalice properly.
Yeah.
Shaping. Hmm, fascinating. So what was that slide you just showed? Big and small?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, very often the biggest cause of problems in a negotiation is emotions. And particularly when it's a smaller organization dealing with a larger one. There's so much emotion, so much energy, and often so much ego tied up in having brought the smaller organization to the level it's at, where the larger organization is looking to either acquire them or acquire their product, their latest product, or acquire their services, whatever the arrangement might be. And they can either see the pie as being smaller or larger than it actually is. And it's ego and emotions that cause more negotiations to fail than anything else. And sometimes the larger organization will ask somebody on their team, will ask a question, which is a standard negotiating question around the scalability or the deliverability, and somebody on the smaller side will take offense. Well, they will assume that their integrity or their character or the quality of the company is being impugned, or in some cases, a very deliberately provocative question will be answered, which is nothing is which with a tonality which implies we don't really believe you or we don't rate you highly. It's a test, but the smaller company, somebody on the team, unless the preparation has been thorough, may fly off the handle and lose a sizable part, no pun intended, of the pie, the potential pie that's there in the negotiation.
So what do you think is going to happen with Brexit? Do you think and Britain's re-entry into in some form back towards integration with EU?
So are you asking me or Ken? Sorry.
Yeah, well, to anybody. Hello.
I'll
I'm
hand that,
lost.
I'll hand that one
I
over to
can't
Ken.
figure that one out.
I was thinking, I hope he's asking Joseph.
Yeah, it seems like they need a negotiator.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of vested interest in Britain remaining out, and there'd certainly be a sizable percentage of the British populace who would prefer to be back in. But equally on the EU side, and probably in France and possibly Germany in particular, there would be quite a degree of reticence to have them back in unless there are major concessions. So I would say watch this space, but don't expect any sudden developments.
Yeah, I totally agree. And with the numerous changes in topside leadership in Britain over the past 10 years, I think it's been
Yeah.
seven prime ministers. And in 10 years, I think that once they really decide upon and define a course that they want to take, that will help. I could think Europe would be looking and saying, where are they really going? Is this another 1 or 2 year person? And then what's going to happen? So these are major issues on the table over there.
Yeah.
It,
Plus the
it
fact that,
goes back generations of cross culture. It's like a cross cultural issue.
oh, multiple generations said absolutely. I mean, there's so many histories of conflict on the European continent, and there are a lot of lingering after effects.
Yeah. So our relationship with UK with London is long and strong, but it's as a result of war and control issues and royalty and rich versus everybody else. And, and here it is again.
Oh yeah, and then there are the undercurrents, the social undercurrents in each individual country as well. And we are living in certainly uncertain times, economically and politically. And pretty much anywhere, any country you look at, there's a great deal of uncertainty there at the moment.
Well,
So
even right here in the US, no doubt
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
So, like for instance, Ken in LA, uh, with the World Cup involvement and then the Olympics coming in, uh, there is huge investment money and power into preparing the city and the area to welcome the world safely and cleaning up homeless, cleaning up streets, cleaning up the loose ends, if you will. And yet all the politics uh, and the lingering effects of the terrible fires. And now we're going into a hot season with El Nino or whatever it's going to be called. Um, the fire warnings are getting louder because it's going to be a repeat. On the one hand, uh, dryness, intermittently heavy wetness. It's unusual for it to rain, other than in February and March in California, unless in Northern California it's different than Southern California, and way different from the coast to the mountains. Way different. And yet it all comes together. And so how the climate change is going to be impacting at the same time, we have these world events coming in over the next 3 or 4 years. Ken, what are you seeing there on the ground level in LA?
Ground level in LA in terms of handling these major world events. Certainly, the city, I think, has come together in numerous ways with FIFA, with the World Cup. Uh, People are very excited. I mean, you read about New York, how excited all the Scottish visitors were, and seeing and learning about America and blending it. I think that's been a very nice unifying event, probably to the surprise of a lot of people, that here you have countries, if you will, competing with each other. And at the same time, this event in these various cities has also brought out a lot of unity, a lot of focus, a lot of interest, people talking about topics other than some of the problems that are going on in these cities and in the world at large. So I think on that sense, it's been very positive. In terms of the future of what's happening here in terms of leadership, major election coming up, what's going to happen with that, major decisions to be made in terms of dealing with the crises that a lot of urban areas are facing. And you just hope for some leadership and support that comes in, I think, for all of us as citizens, to try to get involved a bit, not just wait to see what happens, but what can we do to help with the situations that we're encountering in these cities as well, whether it's working in community organizations or contacting people or just helping out, volunteering. There's a lot of opportunities for that.
So, Joseph, is this scenario that I brought up on purpose? But the reason why I brought it up is because I see it as a major negotiation. You know, the theme that Ali Shami and Stephen Howard, in particular, they wrote their book about how to work successfully with American businesses and business people. And all of that leads to what Philip Berry has coined strengthening international business relationships.
Yeah.
And it's all a negotiation, isn't it?
It is, and it's a willingness to negotiate. It's a willingness to understand. It's taking into account the nuances of culture, the differences in background, the differences in language and understanding of language. And it also depends, like the final slide here, the letter E's with environment. So which environment are we going into? It happens that the World Cup is taking place in the US at the moment, well, the US, Canada, and Mexico. So if I'm going into your home, your homeland, I need to be respectful. I need to be aware of what is your culture, what is your abiding culture, what are your abiding norms, and I need to be cognizant. I need to be respectful. And then what's the negotiation that happens before it actually takes place? Which goes back to the preparation piece. So who was talking to whom before it all happened? And that on such a large scale, that's you're talking about security, you're talking about police, you're talking about so many different elements of the social structure. It talked about obviously the politicians are involved. So what is the consensus amongst them? And that brings me to the next slide. Is your team aligned? And this will be going very much, I think, into Ken's territory as well, in terms of any leadership team, whatever the event is, whether it's a negotiation or something like the World Cup, is your team actually aligned? What's the quality of communication within your team? How much, again, I'll use the word Ken used earlier, how much transparency is there in your team before you start talking with any external parties? Are you all genuinely on the same page and genuinely working together? And if not, if not, how do you address that to ensure problems at the very least are minimized once negotiations start? And that's a big part of where leadership comes in. Who is actually in charge of the process, and is the leader willing to step up?
Ken?
No, I absolutely agree. And we're really talking about bona fide alignment. It's not, yeah, we're going to align the team. All right, team, this is what we're doing. This is what we believe. This is how we're going to work. This is how we're going to approach this. And then the leader, in quote, then goes on, as opposed to having a real team where we really, in order to align, have openness, agreement, and disagreement. It's not that we're all in lockstep with each other. Let's talk about where we might not agree, and let's figure out some strategies so that we can pull this team together. If we're really a team, it's not just one person telling everyone, okay, we're a team and this is what we're going to do. It's to truly get behind it and openly discuss, reconfigure, and redefine, and then focus and come in truly aligned with each other.
Joseph, we have about 10 minutes remaining, but I'm thinking that Ireland is a member of EU,
Yep.
and it's an hour flight or less from London to Dublin, right?
Yep.
And so close. And when Brexit hit, a lot of companies just set up shop across the water in Dublin.
Yep.
And of course others went to Amsterdam and other places. And it was a big deal in the news and worry and opportunity for sure.
Yep.
So Ireland's going to play a really pivotal role here in whatever is going to happen about Brexit or not, or reintegration or old personalities, old systems. I should say established, not old, certainly old, but embedded, ingrained across every border in Europe.
Yep.
They've been fighting for centuries, and there's been peace until Russia invaded Ukraine, and now aggressively putting KGB or whatever they call it to mess things up in every area. It's really vicious.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm Irish and in Ireland, and we have always been a neutral country. We haven't been at war with anybody. Well, there was that certain section of our history with the British, but that's another story. But we've always prided ourselves on being neutral and being able to talk to everybody and being able to bring others together in dialogue. And we probably have a different way of we speak English, obviously. We do have our own native language, but we do speak English, and we do speak English quite often in a different way to how it's spoken in Britain. And we often have a softer way of expressing ourselves. Winston Churchill famously said about Irish diplomacy, it's the art of telling people to go to hell in such a way that, in such a pleasant way that they actually look forward to the journey. So Irish diplomacy has played a major role in helping to settle various conflicts and helping to initiate negotiation between parties who, let's just say, were not particularly well disposed towards each other.
Ken, final words, summary?
Could I just ask a quick question? We've gotten through PEA. I'd love to hear, Joseph, your thoughts on the C and the E. You touched on environment. Can we just hear a little more about that? I think that would be so informative. This has been very helpful. And I love
Thank
the
you.
acronym, PEACE, just as underlying all of it. So I'll stop. Please, Joseph.
Okay, curiosity. Curiosity to me is an essential part of any negotiation, and that applies whether it's politics, business, or even a family domestic situation. Are we willing to suspend our own sense of belief, our own sense of what's right, to be genuinely curious about where the other person is coming from, the other people are coming from? That way we learn so much more, but it has to be genuine. It absolutely has to be genuine. And one of the things I've learned from being curious is people so often soften and they reveal so much more when we are demonstrably and genuinely curious. So often positions can start off being very, very entrenched. But if we soften, and I'm not talking about give up and concede, just automatically, roll over and have our bellies tickled, but if we demonstrate that genuine curiosity and draw people out, it takes a lot of the steam out of the situation and they will often reveal what's really important to them. And if I can just briefly touch on the environment piece, I did mention it earlier. If we're the people organizing the actual environment, there's no rule that says both parties have to sit, the parties have to sit on opposite sides of the table. We can alternate the positions, which automatically helps to bring people more together. It helps to dissolve certain expectations. If, on the other hand, and I've come across this before, if the other party is in charge of the charge of choosing the environment, there are some people who will have their chairs higher because they want to be seen to be and be perceived to be in a position of dominance. And that happens. So environment can play a big psychological role in how a negotiation proceeds.
If who makes the rules of where people sit and in what kind of seating?
That
That's a
depends.
negotiation also, isn't it?
That can be a negotiation, but if you're the one setting up the environment, choosing the environment, setting up the environment, you can make the rules. And then that's almost the beginning of the next stage of the negotiation, because the people then coming into the room will either accede to that or they may walk out or they may decide, no, this is not how it's going to be. So it can set the tone for, that's at the very least the initial stages of the negotiation.
So is this why, perhaps, why the negotiators between U.S. and Iran and Israel, I guess, mainly U.S. and Iran, um, they shipped from Islamabad to Geneva to Washington to whatever.
It may be part of the consideration, but again, going back to what you were saying at the very beginning, there's so much we're not told. And
Mhm.
we get little snippets in the media, but very often those snippets have been fed by somebody in one of the negotiating positions to gauge whether it's to gauge public reaction or to trigger a response from the other side. So the picture we're getting as the public may have nothing to do with reality.
Thank you for being on the program. I know you're busy today, and my next broadcast starts in around 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes. So I need to prepare for that. Ken, thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you. It's always great to hear Joseph's thoughts and insights on all of these topics. And it's just, this is a wonderful mnemonic, if you will, tool that you just provided to us. So I thank you for that.
Always my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Let's do it again next month.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right, this is Ed signing off. Out there, audience, I welcome your feedback and feed forward about the content here, about the style, about the meaningfulness. We'll be preparing the program links, the video, audio, and notes for public use later in this day. So my email is editorglobalbusinessnews@gmail.com. I welcome your feedback. Thank you all.
Thank you. Be well all.
Be safe.